What are some healthy alternatives to worrying?
And how does our relationship with God determine our outlook on life?
Welcome, everyone, to Bearing Up. I'm Zack Griffin, and usually with me is Logan Bruce. He's going to come on a little bit later. We kind of had some scheduling issues this week, but I am so thrilled to have Noah Icenhour with me today. Fun fact, we were roommates in college for I don't know,
Two
was
weeks,
it
I
like three?
think.
Yeah, 2 or 3
Yeah,
weeks.
2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, but he graduated from Freed Hardeman. Was it 2017?
Yep.
And you're currently working on Masters of Divinity through Freed
Yep.
Hardeman,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Slowly but surely, it's just like a never-ending degree.
Yeah. How
the
far
pace I'm
along are
going.
you?
I'm like 60 out of 87 hours, so it sounds like I'm getting there, but like that's
More than
still
halfway.
that's still several semesters at the pace I'm going.
Okay. Cool. And you preach for the Enola Church of Christ. Now, where is this at?
This is in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. No, it pretty much when I came to this area, I thought it was, but we're really between, kind of on a travel route between cities. But I'm on the other side of Conway, Arkansas. But people probably don't know where Conway is, but it's basically all central Arkansas, Little Rock metro area. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. Been here for a year now and was in Little Rock before as a youth minister, but then the opportunity came to preach and I took it.
Yeah. That was kind of like I got into family life ministry, and as soon as I could get into preaching, that was my deal.
Yeah, as soon as I could stop planning the games, I was pumped. So I'm
Yeah.
terrible at that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother animal, youth ministry is, but
Oh yeah, it's great. It just wasn't
yeah.
for me.
Okay. Well, just for our listeners, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Your family, your interests, your travels, just kind of some insight into Noah
Yeah.
Eisenhower. Yeah.
All right. Well, I am from Ohio and grew up there. Graduated high school from there in Springfield, Ohio. Not the same Springfield that every state has a Springfield, but
Yeah.
anyways, so Dayton, Columbus area there, kind of between that, and ended up going to Freed. We had some alumni at our church, and so we took a trip in like seventh grade, and so since then I knew I wanted to go to Freed. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Thought about criminal justice because that's what my dad does. He's retired now, but he was a police officer. Then I also thought about teaching because that's what my mom did. But then probably about my freshman, sophomore year of high school, started having a lot of conversations with kids from school and got really passionate about my faith and decided from there, started speaking at church a little bit and decided from there that's what I wanted to do. And got really involved in our youth groups. I started running some youth group events. We had a youth deacon and he was great, but he also had a full-time job. So I did a lot at the church and just got really involved in ministry of the church there. And that's me. The rest is history. Went to Freed Hardman, always intending to preach. That was the entire time at Freed. That's what I thought I would do. Although, I did youth ministry like part-time and stuff while at Freed. And then just various internships. So my travel, I did internships in Nashville, Montgomery, and up in Ohio as well. But yeah, man, it's been good. Met my wife here in Arkansas. We met at church camp. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that was good. I always tell people she wasn't a camper, so don't she
Yeah,
was
that
a
was
she was
gonna
a
be my next
counselor.
question.
Yeah, I feel like I always have to clarify that because
Yeah.
people look at me weird. They're like, "Oh, no,"
They're
but
at church camp.
so yeah, I was co-directing here with Spencer Cromwell. Actually, we went to school with
Okay.
him.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of mine out here. We work pretty close, and our wives go to school together. But so, anyways, then we got married like before, not even a year after we met and stuff. And so it kind of happened quick. And then been married for coming up on 2 years now. And she is an occupational therapy doctoral student with Spencer's wife, actually Paige, there
Oh,
in Conway.
wow.
But so anyways, just kind of hanging tight. I don't
Yeah.
really know what the future holds, but I guess as far as interest is, I play tennis. I played last night. I lost. I was
Oh,
playing doubles. Me and my partner. I've never met him before, and the other team clearly had some chemistry. They knew each other. Yeah, but anyway, so I love to play tennis, and we got a little Brittany Spaniel dog we love, and anyways, that's
yeah.
about it.
Well, I like hearing, different stories about, different ministers and interests and all. And, because I feel like a lot of times people forget that, ministers they're real people. They
Mm-hmm.
have a history and they have interests and they're not some separate entity, they're, real people.
Yeah, what are
Um,
your? I know you played. Didn't you play football in high school or?
yeah, for a year, but I was really into like the choir stuff and I
Right,
did
right,
that
right.
and all.
I
So,
was gonna
and of
ask, are you
course you
still
knew that
like?
from, yeah.
Do you still get to sing and stuff? Like you lead singing and all that?
When I get the chance, I do. But yeah, we have
You got to
like
be
once a month singing. I get to do it then. So, but
cool.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Well, I'm really interested. You said a little bit about this call to ministry, um, but I want to kind of just briefly dive into that a little bit more because I feel like the minister's call to take his life and it's not really a job, it's a career, it's more of a lifestyle, and so like how did you really kind of come to this realization that this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, early on, like when I first was looking into ministry, I had people ask, like, have you felt called and all that? And I really didn't even know what that meant. We don't really have a
Yeah,
language for that. But so at the time I would have said, no, I just want to do it, so I'm
yeah,
gonna do it. But as time has gone on, I definitely feel like God has confirmed the calling is,
yeah,
I didn't have that language. I didn't feel that way at the time, but now like undoubtedly, I feel like this is what God wants me to be doing with my life. Like undoubtedly, like I have no doubts about that. Just, my talents based on like where I feel my talents are and where my drive is and where my interests are. Like, I would work a secular job for sure and preach on the side, but I would always be one, man, I'd really love to be in an office with some commentaries right now, or I'd love to be visiting some people or, whatever. So, um, did I answer the question? What was the,
that's good, that's
oh,
great.
okay.
um okay, so just last sort of interview question before we get into our big topic for today. So you've been there for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
um
Right at COVID, man.
right at
First week, first week COVID started. I
really.
interviewed. It was so I came that Sunday. Everything seemed to be fine. Like we heard about this virus going on overseas and stuff, and then like literally, and we heard it started to come in and stuff. And that Wednesday, I came for a Wednesday night fellowship meal here, and March Madness was like getting canceled, and everything was like getting canceled. And it's
Yeah.
like March. What do you mean? Basketball's getting canceled is pretty insane. Like this must be a pretty big deal. And then the next Sunday, all the churches were closed down and
Yeah.
all that. And so, and then like the next one after that is when I accepted the job. And so like even the past week or so, like people have really been coming back after their vaccines are kicking in and stuff. So some of these people I'm meeting for the first time in person. So
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. I mean, we've been coming back since the summer, but still some people are just now coming back because of their worries or they didn't have the vaccine yet or whatever. So meeting
Yeah.
some people for the first time.
Yeah. I'm working here. This is my home congregation, but I
Uh
only went full time last May. So
huh.
like it was like as I guess I was working for the junior high and was teaching.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that was
What'd you
kind of my
teach?
full time. Yeah, it's just the junior high here, CA grade junior high.
Oh,
And
okay.
I taught I was a co-teacher for science, ninth grade.
Oh,
So,
cool.
but yeah, and so that was kind of my full time thing, and I was preaching part time at the time, but like I went full time in May, and I was like, this is like I mean, just the whole pandemic thing has made things difficult for sure. But I was
Yeah.
wondering if you maybe I don't know where you are in the process and all about like getting back into like, you know, having church functions or projects or things like that. Is there anything right now that the church is working on, or you're getting ready for there, that is just like I don't know, something on your mind, maybe perhaps?
Yeah, we came back Sunday mornings, probably in like May or June,
Hmm.
and then Wednesday night kind of came back August ish, and we have not brought Sunday nights back, and that's what we're kind of discussing right now is what's the best way to do that, because I know with Wednesdays we've already seen the struggle of like, well, when people know it's going to be online, there's
Right.
that difficulty. So and my kind of thing is if we've made church something we can completely put on a TV or a television
Mm,
screen, then maybe
yeah.
we need to think about, well, how do we make this more participatory and more engaging? So anyways, just trying to think through that before we launch Sunday nights again is, well, what do we want to do better? What do we, what are small things that we can do to make it more interactive to where, and all that. So we're just trying to think through that. We might just do what they always did. I don't know, but we're just thinking through some of it. I'm gonna meet about that sometime this week. But anyways, and I know a lot of churches are thinking about that, and kind of going through that. But
Yeah.
other than that, that's probably the only thing we're really thinking about, really working towards at the moment. We've got a lot of new members right now, so we're trying to integrate them. They're church people from other places, just who have come where it just didn't work, wasn't working out, and they were looking. So trying to think, okay, how do we integrate? It's several different congregations. How do we all come in together to where
Hmm.
we can get to know each other? Because normally they would have fellowship meals every Wednesday, and everyone would get to know each other like that. But
Yeah.
right now we're still not ready to do that.
Yeah, it's
So
it's it's a hard thing. We haven't got back to the fellowship meals yet. I think it's coming. It's coming pretty
yeah,
soon, I think,
yeah,
for us. And like as the summer approaches, I'm thinking, oh, VBS, like we want to have a VBS, but like I don't know if you know if that's coming here soon, maybe at the end of the summer or something like that. I don't know. Because I'm excited to kind of get back into things like that. But
oh
and I
yeah,
know you
yeah.
are too.
Yeah, we're doing camp. I'm really pumped about camp. Me and
Awesome.
Spencer co-directed a week, and really excited about camp. I was really nervous, like I was fretting about it, Zach, and
You were fretting about it.
yeah, worried about camp. Like, man, I want to be socially responsible, but like we're doing everything. Kids are at their baseball, football games. Everyone's not wearing masks there, and I really felt that internal conflict about doing camp, but we're doing it. I'm pumped. I'm
Yeah.
I'm set and I'm ready. So
Well, awesome. Yeah, hopefully we can we've been talking about doing camp too. So yeah, awesome. Well, that kind of gets us well, you used the term.
uh-huh.
So that kind of moves us well into our topic of discussion today. Now, on this podcast, we've talked a lot about contentment. We've talked about worry on the show a lot. But it's because we are trying to aim to encourage our listeners to have a greater faith and a greater joy in God. We want, you know, Christians should live with a contentment, the peace, and so we talk about worry, we talk about fretting, you know, pretty often. But I want to do so again, kind of with a different perspective, and so. Psalm chapter 37, we didn't really talk about beforehand what direction we were kind of going with this. I just said, I had Noah say, I gave him the title, Do Not Fret, and then I gave him Psalm 37. And so that's basically what he got for me. Um, but just what are your, preliminary thoughts, maybe? Um, you know, when you got the topic, when you got that chapter, that particular psalm, what are some things maybe that have, come to your mind?
Yeah, originally I kind of took it just how I used it, like the English word fret. I would think like anxious, worry, and all that, and I think that's there. But as I read the psalm and I looked up the word for fret, it also has kind of like a agitation to it, and an
Mm,
anger, and you can see it in line one. Fret not because of evildoers, and be not envious of wrongdoers. Well, that's really kind of the idea, is like getting anxious or like upset at the goodwill of people who are evil, like people who are doing well in the world, who are not seeking God's way, when like you're committed to doing God's work, yet things don't seem to go for you as it is for them. And so that word fret, like, and so I wasn't talking about camp in that way for sure. I was
No,
using it
no,
more
no,
as
no.
like, but but I found that interesting because that's not how I took it when I first read it. And we'll jump into the Psalm more too. But a couple other things I noticed, and kind of like prepping a little bit, was this is an acrostic psalm.
Hmm.
Is it goes through, and it's not like every 2 lines or anything. It's starting, for our listeners, an acrostic is just, we use it in English, but in Hebrew literature, like a lot, like Psalm 119 and Proverbs 31, every so many lines, you have a word starting with one of the letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it's pretty regular. And one of the reasons that was done, as I understand it, was to help memorize, because the Jewish people would memorize a lot of scripture, and a lot more than we do, and that was probably to try to kind of help that, as you're trying to memorize these long psalms, is to have an acrostic, a mnemonic device. But anyways, yeah, I don't know how we want to jump into that, but those were kind of my initial thoughts and my study. But I found it as reading through the psalm, it's a really enriching psalm, kind of like a real psalm.
Yeah.
It gets real.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And you said something about how, like, going back and looking at what this word really means and all. I think you just brought up something that made me think about how people generally view worry. And I think sometimes um, there are some other emotions that go into worry, and like you said, there's an agitation. Worry
Mhm.
isn't always a, I'm not really looking forward to this, or what is going to happen. Sometimes it's stress, sometimes it is agitation,
Mhm.
and it can be looked at in a lot of different ways. And what I think
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
interesting is, like, as you go through this, there's fretting and there's worrying about different things. The way that I see this is that the first 8 verses, God kind of gives, or David, kind of gives these little words, and they just kind of plug in these things of really like solutions almost.
Mhm.
Um, he's got those first 2 verses that are talking about fretting not because the evildoers, they're going to fade. But then he starts using these, like, there should be like these buzzwords: trust in the Lord, do good, dwell in the land, delight yourself in the Lord, commit your way in the Lord. Verse 7, be still before the Lord, wait patiently before him. Verse 8, refrain from anger, forsake wrath. And so, like, we could have an episode on each one of these things and why they're
Mhm.
so important and how they relate to worry. But it's almost like he puts all of these things out there, and they're like, I see them as these like solutions to this. He's saying, fret not. This is what you can do instead. This is what
Mhm.
you should be doing in place of that worrying and that being stressed out or being
Yeah.
agitated. Um, and so, I didn't see how, I don't know how you saw this at all. But that's kind of how I see it. And then the rest of the chapter is almost like, um, why should we do these things? And there's some comparisons. They're almost like
Mhm.
couplets, sort of, where they compare the wicked and compare the meek or the righteous.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
blessings of the meek, God's relationship with the righteous, and so it's
Yeah.
almost like the why there. But
Sure. And
yes,
I thought what's interesting about this one is it's a hard one to outline,
yes,
is because it's a, you classify the Psalms. There's Psalms of praise, Psalms on Thanksgiving, Psalms of lament, even Psalms of cursing, and this kind of borderlines that. But it's probably to be classified as a Psalm of wisdom, and because
yeah,
of that, it's written a lot like Proverbs. In
That's
Proverbs,
exactly
if
what I
you've
was
ever tried
thinking.
to
Yep.
like, if anyone's ever thought, well, I'm going to do an exegetical series on Proverbs, like, well, it's not going to look like your normal,
No.
you know, expositional series or whatever, but because it's just going to be different. It's going to be harder to do that, and that's kind of how this is. It's there's a central theme, but it's almost like little proverbs of how the good interact with evil, um, and how they view those. But there's a central theme for sure.
Hmm. Yeah,
That same
it's
theme.
it's like Solomon looked at
Yeah,
his dad's psalm here and says, "Hey, that would make a great book to do
yeah,
that." But
yeah.
yeah, that's what it kind of
Um,
like. It almost feels like this is a chapter out of Proverbs that's just put in the Psalms,
right.
and yeah, and because that's so, there's all of these like couplets there that kind of compare the wicked and the righteous, and the wise and foolish, and so I agree with you that there's this sort of wisdom around all of this. But I guess my next question for you on this is, if you're looking at those verses 1 through 8, and you see those words trust, delight, commit, be still, wait, um, is there some kind of like theme that is running through when he says all of those things? So like is there really like a central idea perhaps to this psalm?
Oh,
Um
definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just saying it's kind of hard to outline.
Right.
But even like the acrostic doesn't like go perfectly. Like there's like
Hmm.
sometimes it's every like 5 lines, every 2 lines. It's just a more difficult one to outline. But yeah, I think is don't fret over evil doers. And if you look over, kind of going back to my point there, you look over at verse 8, it kind of even illustrates that. It says, refrain from anger. Well, when I think about being, when I just use the general word anxious, I'm not thinking about anger. Well, but you pointed out sometimes you do. But this is a specific kind of like a fretting or anxiety or stress. It's one that would produce anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself. It tends only to evil. In other words, you become exactly what you're getting frustrated with
Hmm.
when you do, which we've obviously all been there. But yeah, I see the imperatives there, or I assume they're imperatives. But is to trust in the Lord, do good, um, and to the light, to commit, be still, verse 37, um, and refrain from anger, right? That's one of the things to do. And then
Hmm.
from verse 10, it kind of, like you said, it kind of starts going into like what's going to,
Right.
what's
This
going
sort
to
of
take
like
place.
Proverbs
Yeah.
sort of section where there's like, yeah. What stands out to me is that even though they are kind of like, it seems like that hard exposition section of Proverbs. I think there are even some things, though, that tie each one of these things together in the sense that those who stand with the Lord don't have to worry. And there's this sort of there's this theme, and there's these phrases that come out a lot through this psalm. He talks about, and he mentions the phrase uh, about the evildoers or the wicked; they shall be cut off. He talks about like the end of their days. Like I looked for him and he could not be found anywhere because he's gone. It's almost like, and we understand, with judgment there's a place for it, of course not was not designed for the wicked. It was designed for Satan and his angels, but we understand that the wicked go to this place. uh, but the language here is like he's cut off, he's gone, he's no longer here. But then those that stand with God, he uses these again, these repetitive phrases and words in verse 27 and in verse 29. uh, it talks about dwelling forever. Those who are turn away from evil, do good, you shall dwell forever. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell forever. Again, there's more language about the wicked being cut off. But then in verse 37 and verse 38, or yeah, verse 37 38, it talks about the future of the man that's standing with God. And so as I'm looking through this, and it's such a big psalm, compared to I think about like some of the Psalms of Ascent that are like 5 verses. But
Hmm.
then you've got 40 verses here in this psalm. Uh, but so it's a little bit too much for us to kind of go into each verse for us today. Um, but we can kind of see as we're going through this, and just pick anywhere. Verse 32 and verse 33. The wicked watches for the righteous and seeks to put him to death. The Lord will not abandon him in his power, or let the condemned when he is brought to trial. So God does not abandon those who are his, and he's not going to be ignorant of those who are condemned. He's going to make sure they are, you know, that they face the trial, that they face the
Hmm.
punishment. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, so
And I think about like too, like, so this is Psalm of David, who they're thinking about specifically is probably the nations around them, right? They didn't drive everyone out of the land for
yeah,
one, so they've got people living amongst them, wicked people living amongst them, but also just the nations around them that they constantly have issues with, and they clearly, they give us a king plea is like, they have that envy of these other nations, as well, and this kind of agitation that like, well, why aren't we thriving like they are? And God's kind of telling them is, listen, that it's not going to go like you think it looking like now. Like oftentimes it's kind of like you get an Instagram Snapchat of one of these people's life and you think,
yeah,
man, their life is perfect, it's going great, it's and they're these, what else is going on in their life, but it's just everything's going good with them, but you don't realize the other side of the story is, okay, you don't see the fight that took place to take that picture that makes it look
yeah,
perfect or
yeah,
whatever. And is it's short-sighted is to look at the wicked. And when I say wicked, I'm not talking about people we're jealous of in the church or people were,
yeah,
I mean, we're talking about wicked people. This, in context of this psalm, is talking about people who oppress the poor, people who do others wrong, people who aren't generous, people, is kind of the context. But as we think about that, we get jealous of the wicked in that way, and we have that fretting about like, well, why am I not getting as far as they are, or whatever. I think God is saying through David is, well, that's a bit short-sighted, right?
yeah,
There's a point David could have looked at Saul, who was being very wicked to him, and think like, well, he's got the kingship. Well, that would have been a short-sighted thing to do because we know the story how that ends up playing out. But he continues to trust in the Lord, kind of on that journey, as he, lives several years in the just fleeing, but
yeah,
but I think of that too is it's a short-sighted thing is, when we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, but in this context you're trying to keep up with the wicked, right? Your wicked neighbors, is that it's short-sighted. The success that they have is minimal, right? If we believe that true joy is found in the Lord, well, they don't have that, right? If we're talking about wicked people here,
yeah,
is so no matter how happy they look on Instagram or how happy they look everywhere else, wicked people don't know the joy of the Lord, and that's not something that we boast in. Well, we boast in the joy of the Lord, but we want them to have that too. But at the same time, we need to realize what they have isn't all that what it's cracked up to be in the first place. And I think that's what God is saying. I think there's a passage that talks about the grass right at the beginning. Let me look it up. It's a long psalm, by the way, just so our audience knows in case
oh
they don't have a
yeah,
Bible. There's 40 verses, so we're kind of like scrolling
right.
back and forth. I'm on my accordance here. Uh, but there's passages that talks about
Verse 2.
the is it verse 2? The grass. Let's see. Yep. For soon they will fade like the grass and wither like a green herb. And one commentator was saying that in Middle Eastern area like this, the grass will come up real quick and it'll look great, but then it's scorched from the heat immediately and kind of will just disappear very quickly. And
Yeah,
so it's a short-lived grass. I know a lot of people right now in Arkansas, you have to plant I'm replanting my yard right now because it's just terrible. And a lot of people plant ryegrass around here in Arkansas and it doesn't go well because it dies off immediately. It looks great, you plant it, but it doesn't last long. It dies because the heat scorches it out. And that's kind of same idea there is what you're seeing in the wicked. You're seeing that moment of peak where everything looks good, looks like the way of the wicked is good, like it's prosperous. But the Lord said, but that's going to wither. You're seeing that moment. You're not seeing the outcome, the future of that wicked man, which is going to be destruction.
Yeah. I think about the role models that are put up before us,
Yeah.
like, and for especially our young people, the role models that are set up, and like, you know, generally there's a lot of wickedness,
Mm-hmm.
but they're prospering, and it's like, but I think the core issue, and you said it, in the term a few times, and I think it's just it is so crucial to contentment and worry and anxiety and fretting and everything, is this idea of being short-sighted. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's even what David does here by talking about the future, and he inherits the land forever. Those who are meek in the Lord, those who are righteous, those who are generous, those who, give, those who work to do right. Uh, they don't have the glam. They don't have the perhaps the wicked prosperity of cheating others and taking the malicious or the easy way, but they have this long term vision of, of peace, and you know the eternity of this forever with the Lord. Um, and it's just like, I don't know, this is such a common theme throughout the Bible, that
Mm-hmm.
even Joshua didn't inherit there's a rest that remains, the Hebrew writer
Mm-hmm.
says.
Yeah.
He didn't receive, they got into that promised land, but there's something else. And we await that too. And so we run that race with endurance, looking for that. And so, I think you're spot on all of that. Now, I think we're going to try and wrap up a little bit. We're going
Sounds
to
good.
take a break in a minute and get Logan on here. But is there any, other comments, or, any things, maybe some closing thoughts, or anything you'd like to add?
Um, Maybe just an illustration from my own life on this is kind of a funny one. Is you know, I think to illustrate all of this is there's been times where specifically on kind of like I've been on back roads before where I got pulled over for going over like not even that much of a speed limit. And you think, man, I always get caught. And then you'll see that person. I remember a specific instance. I saw someone, they're going like 90 and 45, like just flying, and they take off and they turn the corner. I'm like, man, those guys never get caught. You go five over, you get caught, you get this ticket, and those guys never get caught. Well, then I turned the corner, and sure enough, he was being pulled over. And it's like, but sometimes you don't see what's going on around the corner, which is where that fretting or that jealousy or that envy we see, and that's where you're not always going to see around the corner, but you trust in the Lord that those things are going to be, that righteousness will prevail, justice will prevail. And again, in this psalm, some pretty big issues of oppressing the poor and not being generous and doing wrong to others. But anyways, man, it's a good psalm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate having you on today. It's good to catch up with you, man. And
Yeah.
I'm glad things are going well, for you. And I know that it's difficult during this pandemic and all, in a new place and everything. So, but my prayers are with you, and I appreciate your insight. It's been really good to talk to you, man, because
Me
it's
too.
been way too long.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. For sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Before we go, is your son doing good?
Yeah, Graham's doing great. He's turning 4 in like, it's 12 days. He'll be
Wow.
4 years old. So on the
Yeah.
day we're recording today.
Right. It's weird to think that we've been gone from Freed for more than that time, but it's odd
Man,
to think about.
yeah, feels like it was just yesterday.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks again, man, for coming on. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, follow, do all the social media stuff. We are also partners of the Ministry League. So check the Ministry League app out. They actually just came out with a brand new update. And there's a lot more content on there. Lots of different things. They've revamped the whole app. So check out the Ministry League app. Also check out our Patreon. We have lowered the prices on our Patreon, and so the lowest tier is just $1 a month, $12 a year. I mean, it can't get very much lower than that. So that would be a great way to support us as we try to look at holding up.
Sorry, I'm trying to distract you.
Okay, so please support us in that way. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's continue this discussion. Welcome back, everyone. And now I'm here with Logan.
The old switcheroo.
The switcheroo, the part 2. And so we were glad to have Noah on just a little bit ago, but now Logan's here with us to kind of wrap up, kind of talk about this chapter a little bit, talk about not fretting. Not fretting. So I'm just going to hand it over to you, man.
Well, this is the worst topic for me to talk about because I don't know how I do it, but I am pretty chill. Like, I don't fret just in general, but I don't know how I do it. So I'm not an expert. I just don't do it. And so I always think of the passage in John, I believe, when Jesus talks about being anxious, and he's just basically like, yeah, you don't need to be anxious, you're with me. And it's like, well, that's easy to say, but it's hard to do. But for me, it's just like, I'm just not anxious. I just don't do it. I don't fret. But put that aside, and we'll dive in here. That's right. That's right. And so maybe in a way, I am a good person to talk on this because I don't experience it, so I can look at it from a point of view of, hey, this is how it can feel. Some people, and man, I feel like I'm already going down rabbit holes, and I apologize. It's 5 seconds in. Here we go, down the rabbit hole. Some people, they live off of the fretting. And the people I'm talking about. It's that little lady at church who is nosy and is always stressed about nothing. Yeah. And you know exactly the person I'm talking about. They live off the fret. And but anyway, so I think that's kind of who we can look at and say that's not what I want to feel like, right? But as I dove into this psalm, what jumped out to me was verse 3, and it just plainly says, "Trust in the Lord and do what is good," right? Dwell in the land and live securely. And obviously, he's talking to the Israelite people. But take delight in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desires. Now, that is pretty incredible to think about. This is a psalm of David, right? So generally attributed to David. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you your heart's desires. This is, I think, the key-off verse for all the passages about anxiety, all the passages about worry, all the passages about fretting, which is a weird word because we don't use it nowadays. But fretting, yeah. Fret. Yeah,
on the guitar.
Yeah.
Fretting.
I don't play guitar.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Anyway, but David's solution is like, look, just trust in the Lord, A, in verse 3, and then B, take delight in the Lord. And what's he going to do? He's going to take care of your heart's desires. And like that seems overly simple, but it's also that simple. At least but those are the big verse. That verse just slapped me in the face right off the page.
Yeah, and so Noah and I, we just kind of went into this a little bit, and I pointed out that there's these key words in the first 8 verses here.
Yes.
Trust is one, delight, and I'm glad you spent some time talking about that, because the next thing in verse 5 is a little bit different. So trusting in God and delighting in God is reflecting on him.
Yes.
But then verse 5 is now something else. Commit. That's what we have to do. But it's in response to what you just read there. And so I see all of these things as, here's your solution. Here's what you do instead of worrying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That is really the synopsis of sin versus spirituality, flesh versus our spirit. In anything, when you remove something, you have to replace it with something else.
Yeah.
when I remove a sin from my life, I can't just say, well, it's just going to leave a hole there. I have to fill that with something else. For me, especially in college, that was, and here's a little bit of confession time. That was pornography, right? And I didn't just remove that. I had to implement other things. I had to implement more time with friends. I had to implement more time in my Bible. I had to implement, quite honestly, video games. And that took up that time that I was using on sinful things. So you have to replace it. And ideally, you replace that type of stuff with constructive things. What David is saying here is replace your anxiousness, replace your fret, replace all that negative stress causing emotions with trust in God.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the alternative there. And I appreciate you for sharing that, Logan.
Yeah.
Because, and that's the thing, I was listening to this past week. It was from the Not Just Sundays podcast, which is also a part of the Ministry League. And I was listening to them, and they were talking about meditation. Yeah. And they were talking about how, like, our biblical meditation is not like that of, Eastern cultures, where it's all about emptying your mind and, just a complete pushing out of everything. That's really not a biblical concept at all. No. We're not about emptying ourselves out and just being empty, hollow people. Instead, I guess the way I like to see it is in Colossians chapter 3, which I like to read after a baptism. Mm-hmm. It's, since you are raised with Christ, you seek the things that are above, set your mind on things of the above. And then he says, these are all the things you're going to put to death. You put to death, this sexual morality and selfishness and idolatry and all of this. And then he says, put on these things. And he starts listing, kind and compassionate hearts. Yeah. So like when David says, fret not, he's offering the alternative and the solution.
Yeah.
And so,
well, that's what it boils down to, because you can just tell somebody, do this, but without a constant reaffirming, I guess, solution, it's not, our flesh doesn't quit. I'll put it that way. My body, until the day that I die, will continue to not only regenerate, but also to seek after the most pleasing thing possible. That's just what my body was created to be. But my spirit was created to be above that, right? And so my spirit was created to control those desires. And I, am meant to balance those and meant to give power to one and empower one and not the other. So another way, Zach, and I know that you and Noah have already kind of touched on this, was verse 7. That really jumped out to me, is another one that really jumped out to me. He says, be silent before the Lord and wait expectantly for him. And this is probably the one that I'm not good at, right? I'm not a quiet person. I have been told at work, Logan, you have to stop laughing so loud. And so, because it's a wide open showroom and there's customers, and like, Logan, you can't laugh so loud. But, and that's probably no surprise to anybody. But be silent before the Lord. We like to, I used to be a substitute teacher when I was a youth minister in Henrietta, Texas. And one of the things that I found is that, because for whatever reason, I am not as affected by awkward silence as most people. I would ask a question as a substitute teacher and I would just sit there. When a lot of teachers, they might fill the air with, okay, come on, let's, who's got the answer? I would just say, I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
And then the students, especially the older ones, they would get really awkward. And they would be like, is he alive? Is he breathing? Because we are not used to awkward silence.
Yeah. I do that in Bible class a lot.
Yeah. And I used to do that in Bible class too. But for some reason when I was a substitute, and I did it more and after I did some subbing, but be silent before the Lord. That is that awkward silence. Because guess what? God is not going to give you an answer right when you ask. There's going to be an awkward silence, and you are expected to sit there in the awkwardness and wait for him.
Yeah. And that's perfect, because that leads into the whole rest of the chapter.
Yes.
As we've kind of established, is that it's the comparison between the wicked, and they're prospering, and it looks good for them.
Yes.
And they're being greedy, and they are wicked in all their ways, and all of this, and it looks like they're doing really good, but in the end, it's the short-sightedness that we have sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's this comparison, and it's those wicked that we're like jealous of, or like we want to be like, or how come they're prospering so much?
Right.
We say, we want to be like them, but God says they're cut off. But the righteous, the generous, the the meek, they're gonna dwell in the land forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's a perfect example of how life is. And what David says here is actually not only counterintuitive to today's world, but it's extremely counterintuitive to what people believed in this time. Whereas if you were a good person, you were going to have a good life. If you were a bad person, you were going to be punished. That's true, but not in the short-sighted sense that they saw it, and definitely not in the way we see it. There's sayings about, there's a Western idea of karma, which is totally different from the Buddhist Eastern idea of karma, of life to life. But rather, the Western version of karma was, if you cut me off, you're going to get in a wreck up there. But that's not at all how it works. Right. David says right here, look, there's going to be people who are totally disgusting. They rip people off, they're backstabbers, and they're going to have all the money in the world, and you're going to do everything right and have nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, he says that in his own words. Don't be agitated when that happens, basically, is what he says. But that happens a lot. And that happens, it's so hard to see your enemy doing well. And I'll put it in this terms, and this is the most shallow possible of terms. But I'm a Denver Broncos fan, and we won Super Bowl 50. But the last about 3 to 4 or 5 years with the Chiefs has been very difficult, because I can't stand the Chiefs, and they're a really good football team. But so it's kind of similar. They're the evil, they're the bad guys, and I don't want them to be doing good. And obviously it's a shallow example, but it rings true.
Yeah, and they're not always going to be on top all the time.
They won't be, no. Because we're getting Aaron Rodgers and we're coming for him. So sorry, Zach. Yeah, I know. Maybe by the time this episode airs, the Broncos will have Aaron Rodgers. Who knows? Not likely.
We'll see what happens.
We got to wait till June. Anyway, I say all that as that's what David is saying. Look, when that happens, there's no arguing against God. And that's a callback to Job almost, from where I'm sitting. Yeah. Like, Job had everything wrong with him. He did nothing wrong. He was pretty well, okay. He did as what was recorded, he did nothing wrong. He was a good man. God calls him a righteous man at the beginning of the book and at the end of the book. And he still was sitting in the waste pile, basically scratching his sores with broken pottery. And all his friends were like, what'd you do wrong? What'd you do wrong? But that's not how the world works. And that can cause a lot of stress for people, because you want the solution to what do I have to do to make my life easy? And it's not an insert a token, get out a toy system. It's faithfulness to God and striving after God and trusting in God and committing to God. And I'm reading off of this now. And delighting in the Lord. Those are the things that reap the benefits, but not tomorrow, not next week, in the next life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Verses 18 and 19.
Yes, I was about to go to that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, verses 18 and 19. The Lord knows the days of the blameless, and their heritage will remain forever.
Yeah.
They are not put to shame in evil times. In the days of famine, they have abundance. So I'll just read that. And since you were going in that direction, Go ahead.
No, I was just going to use that to that point. That's the Lord. Just because you feel like nothing's going your way, as a blameless or a righteous person, does not mean God's not taking note. An example, and I'm not going to use names for this person's anonymity, but I have a friend who was very frustrated at their work, and they were ready to move on, and they were called by a higher up in the company that said, "I'm not going to lose you. I've been watching you for several months, and we need you." And that's kind of that is obviously a very temporary analogy, but that's similar to the way what we're seeing with God here, that God is watching us. God doesn't, it's not like he's got a magnifying glass. There's no, oh, are you going to mess up? I'm waiting for you to mess up. But God knew Job was righteous.
Yeah.
He knows us. And it's not a waiting for you to mess up kind of knowing you and watching you. Rather, it's a, come on, you can do it kind of watching.
Yeah.
God's watching us is more akin to watching an Olympic event where you're rooting for the person of your country. And we are all from God's country. We all are, our home is with him.
God's country.
He's rooting for all of us to come home and
Yeah.
win the gold. So that's more of the watching that it is. And
yeah,
it's not I'm trying to test you, but that's the way it is. God watches and he's like, I've seen your work. And sometimes we're rewarded on earth for that, but that's not what we're striving for.
Yeah. Keeping with the sports analogy, you could almost think of it like a crew chief for a race too.
There you go.
He's giving you instructions about how you should go. And then when you come into the pit, they're there and trying to attend to you and help you. And, when I think about God watching and looking at us continually, I don't think of it as all right, is he going to mess up today? One, because God already knows.
Yes.
But it's more of just this continual presence.
Correct.
Father, and so he is not ignorant of the trials that we face, and he's also not ignorant of the faith that he has put into us, which he helps us to increase in and grow in, and he loves us as beloved children.
This is a very good chapter, a very good psalm. There's a lot we haven't even touched on. I think the best way to wrap up this psalm is the way that David did. Yeah, I think the 39 and 40 together. The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord, and their refuge in a time of distress. The Lord helps and delivers them. He will deliver them from the wicked and save them because they take refuge in him. And basically, David is wrapping up this whole idea of trust in God, delight in God, commit yourself to God with where your refuge is. That's where you're going to be. When storms come, and obviously not only physical storms, but spiritual storms, emotional storms, what is your shelter like? If you're taking shelter in God, if you're delighting in God and you've trusted in him and he's your refuge, you're going to withstand the storm. But if you've taken refuge in a worldly refuge, I'll say, then that's the result of what's going to happen, because nothing the world has can withstand the worst storms of the world as well.
It's like sitting under a pole barn trying to get away from a tornado.
Yeah.
I have underlined in mine that in verse 39, from the Lord. It's not from me. There are instructions, some about being, about being blameless and about being generous and, keeping your way, in the right and everything. But when it's all said and done, the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He's the one that gives that. He's the one that establishes us and brings us out of those troublesome times. He is their stronghold. He's the one where there is refuge. I think that was a good way to wrap it up. Now, just kind of I know you're about to record something. This is a completely different topic. You're about to record something here, Logan.
Right.
And so by the time everyone sees this or hears this,
Already been done.
yeah, it's already been done. But could you give us kind of like a sneak peek kind of thing to just kind of get people interested? Well, maybe I'll go check out that Patreon after.
Sure. Yeah. So,
I know we got some big announcements coming on the next episode. So
I'll kind of hold my big punches.
Yeah, exactly.
But coming up tonight is episode 2 of Bearing Up at Night. And I don't know if I don't know how that's. I kind of have an idea of what's going to go on those. Those are going to be every Thursday. And so you get to watch the main episode in the morning, and then Thursday night you can come in, and that may be an overload, but that's okay because you don't have to watch it on Thursday. That's just the best time for me and my schedule. That may change to Friday, but for now it's going to be on Thursdays. So Bearing Up
live.
Yeah, those are all going to be live. Most of them are going to be live. There may be a few that are pre-recorded. Yeah, I reserve the right to be pre-recorded because I'm better that way. Second of all, so what we're going to be looking at throughout that series is we're going to kind of recap, and it's just called Bearing Up at Night. And my schedule is much different from Zach's and any paid minister. I have a 8 to 5, and so I've got places to be, money to make that support my family, and so the evenings are best for me, and I know that most people are the same way, and so I want to be able to have something in the evenings. It's on my schedule that's going to be receivable to you at any time, even though it is live. It can be seen at any time. So that's a snippet of what's to come, and we've got our season 2 finale. I don't even think we've talked about this yet, Zach. Coming up next week, that we're taking a break for about a month. We're tired of each other, and so we're just gonna we're gonna take a break. But we are taking a break for a month, and so but that does not mean that there's no content coming out. It's just that the main podcast is going to be paused for about a month, and we'll reboot with season 3. I guess from the time this comes out. Yeah, with a TBD. So, but anyway, yeah. So that's a little bit of what's coming up on Patreon, as well as some of them may be on Facebook, but most of them, if not, I would say 75 to 90% will be only on Patreon. Okay. And speaking on that, if you have any questions, I've talked to people in person, and so maybe our Facebook messages, you just read it and move on. But if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, if you have any questions about our Patreon, about how that works, about anything, message us. We'll call Zach, and we can talk. We'll let you know. Easy. But like I said, he's already said it's $1.
Yeah,
just $1.
And hold up that other thing. Hold up that other thing, that box you got there too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and this is going to be part. So I guess if you're watching this, it's already been recorded. But I'm about to do the unboxing. It says fragile, and I just shook it really hard. I'm about to do, in my Bearing Up at Night episode, my unboxing of my mug club for Patreon. So if you're watching this, listen to this, go to Patreon, watch my unboxing of my mug from being in the Bearing Up Mug Club, and that's $3 a month. So a lot of cool things, man. Zach, God is blessing us, and he's blessing us not only with his word, but we're blessed to be able to portray that to people, and through an encouraging lens. But also, he's blessed us with a lot of people who actually enjoy listening to us and are being encouraged. And so I pray for all those people, and this has been good. I'm ready for season 3 already, and we're not even done with season 2. So
yeah, I'm excited for what the future holds for sure. So, but thank you for sharing that with us, Logan, as we kind of wrap things up today. But we do appreciate you watching or for listening with us. There is so much more to come. I feel like we're at the end of season 2, but I feel like we're still just getting started. There's so much more stuff, that's coming
season
in the future.
Season 2 of 75.
Oh yeah.
That's where I draw the line.
No more than 75 seasons. All right.
That's right.
All right. Well, Logan, would you like to close us with a prayer?
Absolutely, brother. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for today, and I pray, Lord, that the ears it touches are encouraged, and Lord, that they are brought a little closer to you. Lord, I'm thankful for my brothers Zack and Noah, and I pray that you bless them as in their ministries. And Lord, I thank you for their ability to preach your word. Lord, help us as we go from here to always come back to you and to act like Jesus to everyone we meet. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for watching, everyone.